The main focus of this lesson will be on where political power lies in the 21st century. It will look in particular at the role of the nation state and whether its influence has diminished in the face of intergovernmental organisations such as the UN and the ideologies of non-state actors. Whilst it's dangerous to generalise, for much of the past 300 or so years, in much of the world, the central unit of political power has been the nation state. The formal origins of this system are found in the Peace of Westphalia, the 1648 treaty between European states which ended the 30 Years' War, and which enshrined the notion that states have sovereignty, i.e. the full right and power over their territory and domestic affairs. This power was to the exclusion of all external powers, on the principle of non-interference in another country's domestic affairs. It recognised each state, no matter how large or small, to be equal in international law. Certainly by the mid to late 19th century, catalysed by the mass expansion of European empires, Westphalian sovereignty was the norm in every corner of the world. An initial glance at global politics today reveals an ambiguous picture of where sovereignty and power lies. Whilst at face value, it appears that nation-states are still the preeminent decision-makers, it is clear that there are many non-state actors who are challenging this dominance. These actors can be divided into four broad main groups, namely regional organisations, intergovernmental organisations, cross-border networks, and multinational corporations. Having already discussed the last of these in the previous lecture, we will here examine the other three in turn to see what effect they have had. Regional organisations can come in many different shapes and forms, ranging from the African Union, composed of 54 nation-states, through to the 10 members of ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. These regional organisations are characterised by their defined and unique geographies, or by their historical, economic and trading relationships. Their purpose is to foster cooperation and deepen political and economic integration. The depth of this integration can range considerably, from the exclusively trade-related trade bloc created by the USA, Canada and Mexico through NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, through to the Eurozone, the monetary union of 19 of the European Union's members, and where many have been calling for even closer political integration and harmonisation. The process of regional integration has been described by Ernst Haas as being when nation-states voluntarily mingle, merge and mix with their neighbours so as to lose the factual attributes of sovereignty while acquiring new techniques for resolving conflicts among themselves. Others, however, are more sceptical and see regional organisations as yet another way for global elites to streamline power and to pursue a neoliberal economic agenda. In the previous lesson, we came across three very important intergovernmental organisations, namely the three constituent parts of the Bretton Woods organisations, the IMF, the World Bank and the WTO. As we saw, they are both strong proponents and opponents of the role of these organisations. In addition to these organisations are the multilateral development banks, such as the Asian Development Bank, the Development Bank of Latin America, and the International Fund for Agricultural Development, which between them lend billions of dollars at below market rates. Beyond the purely economic sphere, there is the largest and most influential of the intergovernmental organisations, namely the United Nations. Understanding how the UN works could be a course in itself, so we'll here restrict ourselves to some of its main components, which show just how wide and deep its power and influence go. The three components which we will discuss in order to give this overview are the General Assembly, the Security Council, and the specialised agencies and programmes. Firstly, the General Assembly. which is the main deliberative, policy-making and representative organ of the 193 member states of the UN. The body debates important questions such as peace and security, admission of new members, and budgetary matters. Secondly, the Security Council, the primary responsibility of which is the maintenance of international peace and security. It has 15 members, 5 permanent members, China, Russia, the UK, France, and the USA, and 10 non-permanent rotating members. The Security Council takes the lead in determining the existence of a threat to the peace or an act of aggression. It tries to solve disputes peacefully, and where there is not possible, may look at imposing sanctions or even authorising the use of force to maintain or restore international peace and security. Thirdly, the specialised agencies and programmes, which are independent international organisations funded by both voluntary and assessed contributions. They should be considered to be part of the UN family rather than falling under the direct control of its management system. Some of the best known and most influential of these are UNICEF, providing long-term humanitarian and development assistance to children and mothers, the United Nations Development Programme, which focuses on democratic governance, poverty reduction and crisis prevention, the World Food Programme and the UN High Commission for Refugees, and the International Atomic Energy Agency. The third area to look at in terms of the weakening of the Westphalian model is that of cross-border networks. Put simply, citizens in the modern world do not require states as once they did. The impact of technology has been to totally transform the way that people access knowledge. In the same way that the printing press enabled the mass production of the Bible in the vernacular language, thereby challenging the primacy of the Catholic Church, the internet has enabled the connection of people, irrespective of location, meaning that they can access whatever information they like, whenever and however they like, thereby challenging the primacy of the nation state. Of course, this may be benign. For example, fans of Manchester United Football Club being able to watch games live on television anywhere in the world. Or it may not be. For example, terrorist groups being able to hook up and communicate more effectively. For good or for bad, it has unquestionably affected where the power lies. Furthermore, we can see nation-states themselves acting in ways that call into question their own acceptance of Westphalian sovereignty, a point noted by former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who talked of a new post-Westphalian doctrine of the international community. The past 40 years have seen a huge rise in the involvement of one sovereign nation-state in the internal affairs of other sovereign nation-states. Recently, this has been seen most clearly in the US-led invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan and the Russian invasion of Georgia. This said, at the international level, the principle of legal equality between states still appears to be holding. A remarkable fact when you consider this means China, population 1.4 billion, GDP $10 trillion, and San Marino, population 32,000, GDP of $1 billion, are accorded the same status. However, it may be that, to paraphrase George Orwell, all states are equal, but some are more equal than others. In summary, the picture is still a confusing one. It is clear that the power of the nation-state has been threatened directly by globalization, but the question remains as to whether this is a terminal and inescapable decline, or whether there will be a reversal in fortune at some point in the future. Will the nation-state always be with us, or will it, at some uncertain point in the future, be replaced by regional superstates or even a global government?